The mahogany boardroom table gleamed under fluorescent lights as Rebecca Martinez presented her quarterly revenue strategy. She'd spent 3 months perfecting every slide, every projection, every contingency plan. The numbers were solid, a 23% increase in market penetration through targeted digital campaigns. As you can see, Rebecca clicked to her final slide. Implementing this strategy could generate an additional $2.8 million in revenue by Q4. Her uncle Derek leaned back in his leather chair, arms crossed, that familiar smirk playing at his lips. "That's cute, sweetheart, but stick to colors and logos. Leave the real business decisions to the men who understand how this industry actually works." The room erupted in uncomfortable chuckles. Board members exchanged glances, some shifting in their seats. Rebecca's face burned, not from shame, but from pure, white-hot fury. 5 years of this. 5 years of being dismissed, patronized, treated like a child playing dress-up in daddy's office. She closed her laptop with deliberate calm. "Thank you for your time, gentlemen." The word dripped with ice. As she walked toward the door, Derek's voice followed her. "Rebecca, honey, maybe focus on the marketing materials for next quarter. Something more appropriate for your skill set." She paused at the threshold, her hand on the brass handle. "Of course, Uncle Derek. I'll focus on exactly what's appropriate." The door clicked shut behind her, muffling the resumption of male voices discussing real business. Rebecca stood in the hallway for 30 seconds, letting the rage crystallize into something sharper, more useful. Then she smiled. Rebecca's penthouse apartment overlooked downtown Seattle, but tonight she sat cross-legged on her hardwood floor, surrounded by legal documents yellowed with age. Her father's will lay open before her, the familiar words swimming in the lamplight. "To my beloved daughter Rebecca, I leave 30% of Martinez Industries, with the understanding that she will assume full leadership when ready. Until such time, my brother Derek will serve as acting CEO, providing guidance and mentorship." She traced the elegant script with her finger. 5 years ago, fresh out of Wharton with her MBA, she'd been so grateful for Derek's mentorship. So naive to trust that when ready wouldn't become never. Her phone buzzed. A text from Derek: "Board meeting moved to 9 a.m. Don't worry about attending, just vendor stuff. Too boring for you." Rebecca screenshot the message, adding it to a folder labeled documentation that now contained 847 files. She opened her laptop and began typing. "Nova Craft Industries, Articles of Incorporation." The cursor blinked, waiting. Rebecca cracked her knuckles and began planning her uncle's downfall, one keystroke at a time. "I'm sorry, what meeting?" Rebecca stood in Derek's office doorway, watching him shuffle papers with theatrical importance. "The Morrison Group presentation. I told you, oh wait, maybe I forgot to mention it." Derek didn't look up. "These big negotiations can be overwhelming. Why don't you focus on updating our Instagram? I hear young people love that stuff." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Of course. Social media. My specialty." What Derek didn't know was that Rebecca had already confirmed the Morrison meeting through her assistant's accidental calendar sync. She knew the meeting was happening in conference room B in 20 minutes. She also knew Derek planned to present her strategy as his own. "Uncle Derek, you're absolutely right. I should focus on what I do best." She pulled out her phone, opening the voice recording app. "Could you just remind me again what you think my role should be in this company?" Derek finally looked up, his expression brightening at what he perceived as submission. "Well, Rebecca, I think you need to understand your limitations. This business requires vision, aggressive decision-making, real leadership. You're better suited for support roles. Creative stuff. Leave the heavy lifting to people who understand how to actually run a company." That's incredibly helpful feedback. Rebecca smiled sweetly. "I'll definitely keep that in mind." File saved, Derek_limitations_recording_03.wave at 2:17 a.m. Rebecca sat in her kitchen, laptop screen illuminating her determined face. The Novacraft Industries website was taking shape, sleek, professional, completely untraceable to Rebecca Martinez. Her phone rang. Victoria Chin speaking. Victoria, it's Rebecca. Is the shell company registered? Completely clean. Novacraft Industries, LLC, registered in Delaware, owned by Meridian Holdings, which is owned by, well, eventually it traces back to a trust that can't be connected to you without serious forensic accounting. Rebecca allowed herself a small smile. Victoria had been her roommate at Wharton and now ran a boutique corporate law firm. Perfect. I need you to reach out to 3 companies, Morrison Group, Pacific Northwest Logistics, and Henderson Manufacturing. Derek's former clients? Derek's former clients. They left Martinez Industries in the past 18 months. Offer them exactly what Derek couldn't: personal attention, innovative solutions, and competitive pricing. How competitive? Whatever it takes. By sunrise, Rebecca had signed her first client. Morrison Group, the same company Derek was pitching later that morning with Rebecca's stolen strategy. She couldn't wait to see his face when Morrison passed on his proposal. I don't understand, Rebecca said, her voice carefully modulated to sound confused rather than furious. I sent you the Henderson Manufacturing proposal 3 days ago. Derek leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Proposal? Rebecca, honey, I think you're confused. You mentioned some ideas, but nothing concrete enough to send to a client. Rebecca pulled out her phone, scrolling to her sent emails. Here it is, 47 pages, complete market analysis, implementation timeline, budget projections. Sent Tuesday at 3:22 p.m. I never received anything like that. Derek's voice carried the patient tone adults use with lying children. That's strange. Rebecca's thumb moved across her screen. Because I can see it was opened Wednesday morning at 9:15 a.m. from your IP address. Derek's expression flickered, just for a moment, before smoothing back into condescending calm. Sweetheart, I think you might be reading too much into email tracking. Technology can be confusing. You're absolutely right. Rebecca stood up, smoothing her skirt. I must have made a mistake. I'll be more careful next time. She walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, by the way, Henderson Manufacturing signed with Novacraft Industries this morning. Apparently, they received a proposal that was exactly what they needed. Derek's face went very still. Who? Oh, just some new company. Very innovative approach. I'm sure you'll hear about them soon. Rebecca left Derek staring at his computer screen, frantically searching through his deleted emails. Rebecca was ugly crying in supply closet C when Sarah found her. Not the pretty, single-tear crying of movies, but the blotchy, snotty breakdown of someone who'd finally hit their breaking point. Oh my God, Rebecca? Sarah Kim closed the door behind her, immediately shifting into crisis mode. What happened? I can't, Rebecca hiccuped, trying to compose herself. I can't do this anymore. He's stealing my work, blocking my proposals, making me look incompetent in front of everyone. Sarah handed her tissues from a supply box. At 26, Sarah was sharp, ambitious, and completely invisible to Derek and his old boys network. Derek? Who else? Rebecca blew her nose ungracefully. I'm sorry, you shouldn't see me like this. It's unprofessional. Screw professional. Sarah sat down on a box of printer paper. You want to know what's unprofessional? Last year, Derek reassigned my market analysis to Brad Mitchell, then presented it to the board as Brad's work. When I complained to HR, Derek said I was being emotional and not a team player. Rebecca looked up, her tear-streaked face suddenly focused. He stole your work too? Worse. He fired my sister Jenny from accounting 2 weeks later. Said she had attitude problems after she backed up my story about the analysis. The supply closet fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Rebecca stared at Sarah, seeing not just an ally, but a fellow survivor. How many others? Rebecca asked quietly. You mean how many other women has he screwed over? Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. Honey, we could start a support group. Rebecca wiped her eyes, her spine straightening. Or we could start a revolution. The restaurant was dim, expensive, and nearly empty at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. Perfect for conversations that needed to stay private. Margaret Thompson sat across from Rebecca, her silver hair immaculate despite being 82 years old. Your father was one of the smartest men I ever knew, Margaret said, cutting her salmon with surgical precision. He also had terrible judgment about family. Rebecca sipped her wine, waiting. Margaret had been her father's first major investor, turning a small construction loan into a multimillion-dollar partnership. She didn't make small talk. Derek is running your father's company into the ground, Margaret continued. Lost 3 major clients this quarter. The Henderson manufacturing debacle was just the latest. Word is spreading that Martinez Industries promises big but can't deliver. What kind of word? The kind that kills companies. Margaret set down her fork. I've seen the internal numbers, Rebecca. Derek's burning through cash reserves, making panicked decisions, alienating long-time clients. Unless someone takes control within the next 18 months, Martinez Industries will be bankrupt or acquired at fire sale prices. Rebecca felt a familiar flutter in her chest, the sensation she'd learned to recognize as opportunity disguised as crisis. What would you do? Margaret's smile was razor-thin. I'd remember that your father built this company from nothing because he understood one fundamental truth. In business, survival isn't about being the biggest or the loudest. It's about being the smartest. And if someone wanted to be very smart about this situation? I'd say that someone should move quickly. Markets don't wait for family drama to resolve itself. Margaret raised her wine glass. To smart decisions. Rebecca clinked her glass against Margaret's, already calculating her next 12 moves. Sarah knocked on Rebecca's apartment door at 11 p.m., holding a thick manila folder like it contained nuclear codes. You're not going to believe this, Sarah said, pushing past Rebecca into the living room. Derek left his computer unlocked when he went to that client dinner. I had maybe 20 minutes. Rebecca closed the door, her pulse quickening. Please tell me you were careful. I copied everything to a secure drive, then printed the most damaging stuff. Sarah opened the folder, revealing stacks of documents. Rebecca, it's worse than we thought. The first page showed quarterly revenue projections, all fabricated. The real numbers were 30% lower than what Derek had been reporting to the board. Jesus, Rebecca whispered, flipping through vendor complaints, delayed payment notices, and client cancellation letters. How has he been hiding this? Creative accounting and outright lies. Sarah pointed to a spreadsheet. Look at this, he's been moving money between accounts to make cash flow look healthy right before board meetings, then moving it back. Rebecca studied a particularly damning email thread between Derek and the company's CFO. Her uncle had been cooking the books for at least 18 months. Sarah, this is fraud. Serious, go-to-prison fraud. I know. Sarah's voice was steady. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Rebecca stared at the evidence of her uncle's crimes, feeling the last vestiges of family loyalty crumble into dust. I'm going to end him. Derek called the performance review for Friday at 4 p.m., the corporate equivalent of a public execution. Rebecca walked into the conference room to find Derek flanked by HR Director Patricia Wells and CFO Michael Chen. A digital recorder sat in the center of the table. Rebecca, please sit. Derek's voice was formal, businesslike. This won't take long. Of course. Rebecca placed her own phone on the table, recording app already running. I appreciate you making time for this. Patricia opened a thick folder. Rebecca, we've received several complaints about your performance and attitude over the past few months. What kind of complaints? Derek leaned forward. Missed deadlines, subpar work quality, resistance to feedback, and inappropriate challenges to company leadership. Each accusation was a lie, and they all knew it. But Rebecca remained calm, letting Derek hang himself with his own rope. Can you be more specific about these missed deadlines? The Henderson proposal, for one. You completely failed to deliver. Interesting. Rebecca pulled out her phone, scrolling to her sent emails. Because I have confirmation that I sent you a 47-page proposal 3 days before the deadline, which you then deleted without forwarding to the client. Patricia and Michael exchanged glances. This wasn't going according to Derek's script. Furthermore, Rebecca continued, I have documented evidence of every project I've completed on time and under budget, every client interaction, and every contribution I've made to this company's success. Derek's face was reddening. You're being defensive and confrontational, which proves my point about your attitude. And you're lying, which proves mine about your leadership. The room fell silent. Patricia looked deeply uncomfortable. Michael was staring at his hands. Derek stood up abruptly. I think we're done here. Rebecca, consider this your final warning. Consider this my formal notice that I'll be taking a more active role in company operations going forward. Rebecca gathered her things. I think my father would have wanted that. She left Derek staring at the recording device, finally understanding that his niece wasn't the pushover he'd thought she was. Rebecca's fingers flew across her keyboard, finalizing the last details of Novacraft's corporate structure. The clock on her laptop read 2:47 a.m., but adrenaline kept her wired and focused. Meridian Holdings, LLC, authorized agent, Victoria Chen, she typed into the Delaware corporate filing system. 3 shell companies, all perfectly legal, all completely untraceable to Rebecca Martinez. Her trust fund, $1.2 million she'd never touched, was now the seed capital for Novacraft Industries. By morning, she'd have business accounts, a registered address, and a professional website that looked like it belonged to an established company. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Henderson Manufacturing wants to meet. They're impressed with the Novacraft proposal. Rebecca smiled, typing back, schedule it for next week. Make sure they know we're selective about our clients. She opened a new browser window and navigated to her father's company website. Martinez Industries, building excellence since 1987. Her father's photo still dominated the leadership page, even though he'd been dead for 6 years. Derek had kept it there for credibility. By 4 a.m., Rebecca had signed her second client, Pacific Northwest Logistics, a company that had left Martinez Industries after Derek botched their contract renewal. They'd been hemorrhaging money for 8 months until Novacraft offered them a solution Derek never could have conceived. Rebecca finally closed her laptop as dawn crept through her windows. In 6 hours, Derek would discover that his latest target client had signed with a mysterious competitor. He still wouldn't know that competitor was sitting 30 feet away from him every day, planning his destruction one contract at a time. Rebecca was at her gym when Sarah's panicked call came through. Turn on the Business Insider podcast. Now. Rebecca stepped off the treadmill, pulling out her earbuds. What's wrong? Derek. He's on the Marcus Klein show, and he's, just listen. Rebecca found the episode, Family Business Dynamics in Modern Leadership, and skipped to the 23-minute mark. Marcus Klein's voice filled her earbuds. So Derek, what's it like working with the next generation in a family business? Derek's laugh was loud, condescending. Well, Marcus, I'll be honest, it's like babysitting sometimes. My niece thinks she's ready to be CEO, but she doesn't understand the first thing about real leadership. I've been protecting this company from her mistakes for years. Rebecca's hands clenched around her phone. She's got these grand ideas, Derek continued, but no practical experience. Last week she wanted to implement some social media strategy that would have cost us 6 figures. I had to shut it down before she embarrassed us with our clients. That must be challenging, Klein said. It is. But someone has to be the adult in the room. My brother left me this company to protect, not to hand over to someone who thinks running a business is like playing with dolls. The episode ended. Rebecca stood in the middle of the gym, surrounded by the sounds of spinning bikes and weight machines, feeling something fundamental shift inside her chest. Her phone buzzed with notifications. The podcast was already being shared on LinkedIn. Business blogs were picking up quotes. Derek had just publicly humiliated her in front of thousands of industry professionals. Rebecca smiled, opening her contacts and scrolling to Marcus Klein's show, producer. Time to give them a follow-up story they'd never forget. The text came from an unknown number at 7:33 a.m. If you want proof your uncle is stealing from the company, check account 4479. Rebecca stared at her phone, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. She'd never seen this number before, but something about the message felt authentic. She forwarded it to Victoria. Can you trace this number? Victoria's response was immediate, working on it. But first, do you have access to check account 4479? Rebecca did. As a board member and shareholder, she had legal access to company financial records, though Derek had made it clear such requests were unnecessary and micromanaging. She called the company's bank directly. This is Rebecca Martinez from Martinez Industries. I need account statements for all company accounts ending in 4479. Of course, Ms. Martinez. I'll have those sent to your registered email within the hour. The statements arrived as Rebecca was finishing her second cup of coffee. Account 4479 was listed as Martinez Industries Special Projects, but the transaction history told a different story. Regular transfers to DK Consulting Services, $15,000 monthly for the past 2 years. Rebecca's Google search for DK Consulting led to a shell website advertising business development services. The registered owner was Derek's wife, Catherine. Rebecca screenshot every transaction, every date, every dollar amount. Her uncle hadn't just been stealing, he'd been systematic about it. Professional. Arrogant enough to think no one would ever look. Her phone buzzed. Why? This time Rebecca didn't hesitate. The Martinez family dining room hadn't changed since Rebecca's childhood: heavy oak furniture, oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, and the lingering smell of her grandmother's cooking. Tonight it felt like a stage set for Derek's final performance. A toast, Derek announced, raising his wine glass with theatrical flourish. To Rebecca's growth and maturity over these past few months. Rebecca lifted her glass, smiling serenely. Her Aunt Catherine beamed from across the table. Derek's 3 children, Rebecca's cousins, looked bored and checked their phones. I'm proud to announce, Derek continued, that Rebecca has decided to step back from day-to-day operations to focus on personal development. Finding her true path in life. How wonderful, Catherine gushed. Sometimes we need to step away to find ourselves. Rebecca nodded graciously. Uncle Derek is absolutely right. I've learned so much about where I belong in this family business. Derek's chest puffed with satisfaction. It takes wisdom to recognize one's limitations. It certainly does, Rebecca agreed, already mentally composing the press release she'd send out tomorrow morning. At 6 a.m. the next day, targeted ads began appearing on industry websites, Novacraft Industries, where innovation meets excellence. The campaign was anonymous, professional, and featured case studies that looked remarkably similar to projects Derek had bungled over the past year. Rebecca's phone started ringing by 7 a.m. Potential clients who'd seen the ads wanted to know more about this impressive new company that seemed to specialize in exactly the kind of problems Martinez Industries couldn't solve. Derek wouldn't notice the ads for another week. By then, it would be too late. Richard Vance had been a minority shareholder in Martinez Industries for 12 years, but the podcast debacle was the final straw. When he called Rebecca asking if she knew anyone who might want to purchase his 7% stake, she tried to sound surprised. Oh my, Mr. Vance. I had no idea you were considering selling. Derek's making the whole company look unprofessional, Vance said. That podcast interview was embarrassing. I don't want my name associated with that kind of attitude. Rebecca arranged to meet Vance at his country club, bringing Victoria as her financial advisor. The negotiation was surprisingly straightforward. Vance wanted out quickly and quietly. The paperwork will show the purchase being made by Meridian Holdings, Victoria explained. It's cleaner that way, fewer questions about family dynamics. Vance signed without hesitation. He was so eager to distance himself from Derek's public relations disaster that he barely negotiated the price. Walking back to her car, Rebecca felt the weight of the signed documents in her briefcase. She now owned 37% of Martinez Industries. Still not enough for control, but getting closer. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Derek's looking for Vance. Something about a routine shareholder call. Should I warn him? Rebecca typed back, no. Let Derek find out the hard way. That afternoon, Derek learned that one of his longtime supporters had sold his shares to an anonymous buyer. For the first time in 5 years, Rebecca saw genuine worry in her uncle's eyes. He was finally beginning to understand that the ground beneath his feet was shifting. Jessica Chen from Business Weekly called Rebecca 3 days after Derek's podcast appearance went viral on LinkedIn. Ms. Martinez, I'm writing a follow-up piece about gender dynamics in family businesses. Would you like to comment on your uncle's remarks about your capabilities? Rebecca had been expecting this call. I appreciate you reaching out, Jessica, but I prefer to let my work speak for itself. I understand. But surely you have some response to his characterization of your role in the company? Rebecca paused, as if considering carefully. I suppose I'd say that I believe results speak louder than bloodlines. Success in business isn't about who your relatives are, it's about what you can deliver for your clients. That's an interesting perspective. Anything else? Just that I'm excited about the future. There are some really innovative companies emerging in our industry. Fresh approaches, creative solutions. It's an exciting time to be in business if you're willing to adapt. The article appeared 2 days later, Generational Tensions, When Family Business Gets Personal. Derek's podcast quotes were prominently featured alongside Rebecca's measured response. The comments section exploded. Industry professionals who'd worked with both Derek and Rebecca began sharing their own experiences. The consensus was clear: Derek represented the old guard, while Rebecca embodied the future. Rebecca's LinkedIn profile received 847 new connection requests in 48 hours. Derek's mentions were less flattering. Perfect, Rebecca murmured, accepting connection requests from CEOs, investors, and potential clients. Each new contact was a weapon in her growing arsenal. Rebecca spread the financial projections across her dining room table like battle plans. Her accountant, David Park, had been conservative in his estimates, but even the most cautious numbers were staggering. Novacraft is growing at 23% month-over-month, David explained, pointing to the revenue charts. If this trajectory continues, and given your client pipeline, you'll overtake Martinez Industries' annual revenue within 18 months. Rebecca studied the graphs showing the two companies' paths, one climbing steadily upward, the other declining into irrelevance. What's the tipping point? She asked. If you capture 3 more major clients of Derek's caliber, you'll have market dominance in the Pacific Northwest corridor. After that, Martinez Industries becomes a regional player while Novacraft goes national. Rebecca's phone buzzed with a notification from her business development team. 2 more companies had reached out about Novacraft's services, both former Martinez Industries clients who'd left after Derek's management failures. David, I need you to accelerate the timeline. What would it take to reach that tipping point in 12 months instead of 18? David pulled out his calculator. You'd need to triple your marketing spend and hire at least 6 new consultants. Are you prepared for that level of investment? Rebecca looked at the projections again, seeing not just numbers but vindication. Whatever it takes. She was done playing defense. Time to end this war decisively. The abandoned warehouse sat on the outskirts of Seattle like a monument to forgotten dreams. Rebecca's father had started Martinez Industries in this building 32 years ago, back when it was just him, 2 employees, and a vision for something bigger. Rebecca used her old key, somehow Derek had never thought to change the locks, and stepped into the dusty silence. Shafts of sunlight cut through broken windows, illuminating workbenches covered in white sheets and boxes of old files. In her father's former office, she found a metal filing cabinet that hadn't been touched in years. Inside were blueprints, correspondence, and financial records from the company's early days. One folder made her stop breathing: Partnership Agreement, Derek Martinez. The documents told a story Derek had never shared. Her father hadn't just hired Derek as a manager, he'd saved him from bankruptcy. Derek's previous business had failed spectacularly, leaving him deep in debt and professionally ruined. Rebecca's father had paid Derek's debts, given him a fresh start, and eventually made him a partner. "I believe everyone deserves a second chance," her father had written in a letter to the bank. "Derek made mistakes, but he's family. I will personally guarantee his rehabilitation." Rebecca found herself crying, not from sadness, but from rage. Her father had sacrificed for Derek, trusted him, built him up from nothing. And Derek had repaid that loyalty by stealing the company and destroying everything her father had built. She gathered the documents, her tears falling on pages yellowed with age. Then she called Victoria. "I need you to file a lawsuit," Rebecca said, her voice steady despite her emotions. "I'm taking back what was stolen from my father." Victoria's office overlooked Elliott Bay, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made visitors feel simultaneously important and intimidated. She placed a thick legal brief on the conference table between them with the satisfaction of a master chess player revealing checkmate. "Rebecca, this is beautiful work," Victoria said, flipping through evidence folders. "The financial fraud, the breach of fiduciary duty, the violation of partnership agreements, we have enough to bury Derek professionally and personally." Rebecca examined the filing, each page representing months of careful investigation and documentation. "What are our options?" "Option 1, we file criminal charges. Derek goes to prison, but the company might not survive the scandal." "And option 2? Victoria's smile was predatory. "We make him an offer he literally cannot refuse. Step down voluntarily and accept a generous severance package, or face criminal prosecution that will destroy him and his family." Rebecca studied the evidence again: bank records, forged documents, recorded conversations, testimony from employees Derek had wronged. It was comprehensive, devastating, and absolutely airtight. "How long before he realizes what's happening?" "That depends on how quickly you want to move. We could have papers served tomorrow, or we could let you position yourself first." Rebecca thought about her father's legacy, about all the employees Derek had mistreated, about 5 years of humiliation and stolen opportunities. "I want to look him in the eye when his world collapses," she said. "Give me 2 weeks to get everything in place." Victoria gathered the documents. 2 weeks. Then Derek Martinez learns what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman. Eleanor Walsh was 78 years old, impeccably dressed, and the most underestimated person in every boardroom she entered. As the only woman on Martinez Industries' board of directors, she'd spent 15 years being ignored, dismissed, and treated like decorative furniture. "I was wondering when you'd finally reach out," Eleanor said, stirring sugar into her coffee with precise movements. "I've been watching you maneuver for months." Rebecca chose her words carefully. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Oh, please." Eleanor's laugh was sharp as crystal. "The mysterious new company stealing Derek's clients? The perfectly timed PR disasters? The anonymous shareholder buyouts? You've been playing a masterful game." Rebecca set down her cup. "And what do you think about that?" "I think it's about time someone challenged that pompous fool." Eleanor opened her purse and withdrew a legal document. "Your father and I had an arrangement Derek never knew about. When your father died, I inherited his voting proxies for my shares. I've been waiting 6 years for the right moment to use them." Rebecca examined the papers. Eleanor Walsh owned 6% of Martinez Industries, but controlled voting rights for an additional 3% through her late husband's estate and her father's arrangements. Why are you telling me this? Eleanor's eyes were bright with intelligence and suppressed anger. Because I've watched Derek destroy everything your father built. I've sat in boardrooms while he dismissed every woman, ignored every innovative idea, and slowly strangled this company with his ego. And you think I can do better? Honey, I know you can do better. I've been tracking Novacraft's performance. Your client satisfaction rates are double what Derek achieves. Your profit margins are higher. Your employee retention is perfect. Eleanor signed the proxy documents with a flourish. These votes are yours. Use them wisely. Rebecca stared at the papers, feeling the weight of finally having enough support to challenge Derek directly. Mrs. Walsh, why did you wait so long? Eleanor's smile was satisfied and slightly dangerous. Because revenge is a dish best served cold, dear. And Derek's about to find out just how cold it can get. Rebecca sat in her car outside Martinez Industries headquarters, phone pressed to her ear, listening to Victoria confirm the final details. The proxy votes from Eleanor Walsh give you effective control of 51.3% of outstanding shares, Victoria said. Even if Derek mobilizes every ally he has, you have majority control. And the legal documentation? Bulletproof. Eleanor's proxy agreements were drafted by your father's original attorney. Derek can't challenge them without exposing himself to the fraud investigation. Rebecca stared up at the building her father had built, the company that bore her family name, the legacy Derek had been slowly destroying. In 10 minutes, she'd walk into an emergency board meeting she'd called, and everything would change. Victoria, once I do this, there's no going back. Rebecca, there was no going back the moment Derek decided to steal from you. This is just making it official. Rebecca gathered her briefcase and walked toward the building, nodding to security guards who'd watched her grow up. She took the elevator to the 14th floor, her heart pounding but her resolve absolute. The boardroom was already full when she arrived. Derek sat at the head of the table, looking irritated about the emergency meeting his niece had called. The other board members looked curious, concerned, or openly skeptical. Rebecca placed her briefcase on the table and opened it, revealing neat stacks of legal documents. Gentlemen, ladies, she began, her voice clear and confident. Thank you for coming on short notice. I've called this meeting to address some irregularities in company management and to propose immediate changes to leadership. Derek scoffed. Rebecca, what are you? Uncle Derek, please let me finish. Rebecca's tone was polite but unmistakably commanding. As of this morning, I control 51.3% of voting shares in this company. I'm exercising those voting rights to call for new leadership elections. The room went dead silent. Derek's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. That's impossible, he said. You only own 30%. Rebecca smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. Actually, Uncle Derek, I own 37% directly, plus voting proxies for an additional 14.3%. Eleanor, would you care to explain your decision? Eleanor Walsh straightened in her chair, her voice carrying decades of suppressed authority. I'm exercising voting rights established by partnership agreements your late brother created. Rights that give Rebecca Martinez controlling interest in this company. Derek stared around the table, seeing his support evaporate in real time. Board members who'd laughed at Rebecca's proposals just months ago were now studying their hands, unwilling to meet his eyes. I call for a vote of no confidence in the current CEO, Rebecca announced. All in favor? 7 hands rose around the table. Derek sat frozen, watching his world collapse with mathematical precision. Motion carries, Rebecca said. Derek Martinez is hereby removed from his position as Chief Executive Officer of Martinez Industries, effective immediately. Derek hadn't moved for 3 full minutes. He sat at the head of the boardroom table like a statue, staring at the voting proxies that had just ended his career. This is impossible, he whispered. You can't just. I built this company. Actually, Uncle Derek, my father built this company. You've spent 5 years slowly destroying it. Rebecca's voice was steady, professional, completely devoid of emotion. But don't worry, I'm prepared to be generous. She slid a manila envelope across the polished table. Derek opened it with trembling fingers, revealing a severance agreement that would have seemed luxurious under different circumstances. 18 months salary, continuation of your health benefits, and a non-disclosure agreement, Rebecca explained. All you have to do is sign and walk away quietly. Derek's face was circling through colors like a broken traffic light. And if I don't sign? Rebecca opened her briefcase again, withdrawing a second, much thicker envelope. Then we discuss the criminal fraud charges my attorney has prepared. Account 4479, Account 7734, the DK consulting payments to your wife, the forged financial reports you've been submitting to the board. She spread the evidence across the table like playing cards. Bank statements, email printouts, recorded conversations, witness testimonials from employees Derek had wronged. The FBI takes corporate fraud very seriously, Uncle Derek. Especially when it involves amounts exceeding $200,000. Derek's hands were visibly shaking now. You've been spying on me. I've been documenting your crimes. Rebecca's voice remained calm, but her eyes were ice cold. 4 months. Every transaction, every lie, every time you stole credit for someone else's work. Rebecca, please. I'm family. So was I, Uncle Derek. But that didn't stop you from humiliating me, stealing from me, or trying to destroy my career. Rebecca gathered the fraud evidence back into its folder. You have 24 hours to decide. Sign the severance agreement and disappear quietly, or spend the next 5 years in federal prison. Derek reached for the severance papers with trembling hands. What about my children? My wife? If this gets out, then you should have thought about that before you decided to steal from your dead brother's company. Rebecca stood up, smoothing her skirt. The board will receive your resignation letter tomorrow morning. Your office will be cleaned out by security. Your access cards and company accounts will be deactivated at midnight. Derek looked around the table one final time, seeing nothing but averted eyes and uncomfortable silence. The board members who'd laughed at his sexist jokes, who'd supported his dismissal of Rebecca's ideas, who'd enabled 5 years of corruption, none of them would meet his gaze now. I made you, Derek said, his voice cracking. I gave you opportunities, taught you the business. You gave me nothing but contempt, Rebecca interrupted. Everything I achieved, I did in spite of you, not because of you. She walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Uncle Derek? That podcast interview where you called me incompetent? It has 500,000 downloads now. I'm sure your reputation will recover eventually. The door closed behind Rebecca with a soft click, leaving Derek alone with the wreckage of his arrogance and the signed papers that ended his career. Rebecca's LinkedIn post went live at exactly 9 a.m. Pacific Time, timed for maximum visibility among business professionals starting their day. Today I'm proud to announce that I am the founder and CEO of NovaCraft Industries, the company that has been quietly revolutionizing project management and business consulting across the Pacific Northwest. For the past 8 months, NovaCraft has served clients who demanded excellence, innovation, and respect. We've achieved a 97% client satisfaction rate, delivered every project on time and under budget, and built Some of you may have heard recent commentary about women's capabilities in business leadership. I believe actions speak louder than words. NovaCraft's results speak for themselves. I am my father's daughter. I am proud to carry on his legacy of building businesses that serve clients with integrity, innovation, and unwavering commitment to excellence. The future belongs to companies that embrace talent regardless of gender, age, or background. The future belongs to leaders who earn respect through performance, not politics. Welcome to the future. Welcome to NovaCraft. #women in business, #leadership, #innovation, #results. The post included a professional photo of Rebecca in her new corner office, a timeline of Novacraft's major client victories, and testimonials from satisfied customers. Within 2 hours, the post had 15,000 likes and 847 comments. Business journalists were requesting interviews. Potential clients were flooding Novacraft's website. Industry leaders who'd never taken Rebecca seriously were suddenly eager to connect. Derek called her cell phone 17 times. She declined every call. Sarah texted from the Martinez Industries office, "Derek's having a complete meltdown." Security had to escort him out. Half the staff is updating their LinkedIn profiles. Rebecca smiled, watching her notification counter climb steadily higher. The reveal was perfect, professional, confident, and impossible to ignore. Her father would have been proud. The video appeared on Derek's Facebook page at 2:47 a.m., clearly recorded after several drinks and zero consultation with anyone possessing judgment or sobriety. This is unbelievable," Derek slurred into his phone camera. "My own niece, my brother's daughter, she's been sabotaging me for months. Stealing my clients, turning people against me, recording private conversations." His face was red and puffy, his usually perfect hair disheveled. Behind him, Rebecca could see his home office, the same office where he'd made dozens of calls badmouthing her to potential clients. "I was protecting her," Derek continued, his voice rising. "She wasn't ready for real responsibility. I was trying to teach her, guide her, and this is how she repays me? By destroying everything I built?" Rebecca watched the video with fascination and growing satisfaction. Derek was unraveling in real time, confirming every negative impression his recent behavior had created. "She recorded me without permission. That's illegal, right? She stole confidential information. She. Derek's voice broke, and for a moment Rebecca almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The video continued for another 3 minutes, each word digging Derek's grave deeper. He accused Rebecca of being vindictive, ungrateful, and manipulative. He claimed she'd seduced clients away from Martinez Industries through feminine wiles and unprofessional behavior. By morning, the video had been shared 2,000 times and featured in 3 business blogs. The comments were universally negative, professionals expressing disgust at Derek's misogyny and unprofessional behavior. Rebecca's phone rang. It was Marcus Klein from the podcast where Derek had first publicly humiliated her. "Rebecca Martinez? This is Marcus Klein. I think we need to have a conversation about a follow-up interview. Something tells me you have quite a story to tell." Rebecca smiled. "Mr. Klein, I thought you'd never ask." The ceremony was small but significant. Rebecca stood before the Martinez Industries headquarters, soon to be renamed Victoria Corporation in honor of her mother, watching workers install new signage. Victoria Chen handed her a champagne flute. "Your mother would have loved this." "She would have said I was being too dramatic," Rebecca laughed. "But she also would have been proud." The new corporate logo was elegant, modern, and completely Rebecca's vision. Gone was the heavy, traditional Martinez Industries branding that had looked dated for a decade. In its place was sleek typography that conveyed competence, innovation, and forward-thinking leadership. Sarah approached, tablet in hand. "The staff meeting went well. Retention is at 93%. Most people are excited about the new direction." "And the others?" The 3 managers who were Derek's closest allies submitted their resignations this morning. "Good riddance." Rebecca watched the old Martinez Industries sign being carefully removed, revealing the fresh Victoria Corporation lettering beneath. Her throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "You know what the best part is?" Rebecca said, raising her champagne glass toward the building. "Derek spent 5 years telling me I wasn't ready to run a company. It turns out he was right. I wasn't ready to run his company. I was ready to build something better." As if summoned by her words, Eleanor Walsh appeared at Rebecca's elbow. "Your father would be so proud, dear. You've taken his vision and made it stronger." Rebecca looked up at the building where she'd grown up, where she'd learned about business and betrayal, where she'd discovered her own strength. "This is just the beginning," she said. The Women's Entrepreneurship Conference filled the Seattle Convention Center's main hall with 3,000 attendees. Rebecca stood backstage, adjusting her microphone and reviewing her notes one final time. "You ready for this?" Sarah asked, straightening Rebecca's jacket. "I've been ready for this my entire life." The introduction was standard conference fare, Rebecca's credentials, achievements, and the inspiring story of overcoming family business challenges. But when Rebecca walked onto the stage, the energy in the room shifted. She was no longer Derek's dismissed niece or the woman struggling to prove herself in boardrooms full of men. She was Rebecca Martinez, CEO of 2 successful companies, featured on Forbes' 30 Under 30 list, and living proof that competence trumps connections. "6 months ago, my uncle told me that girls can't run businesses," Rebecca began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "He said I should stick to colors and logos and leave the real business to the men." The audience murmured, recognizing the setup for a revenge story they were eager to hear. "So I bought his business." The room erupted in applause and laughter. Rebecca waited for quiet, enjoying the moment. But this story isn't really about revenge. It's about something more important, the power of underestimation. She clicked to her first slide, showing Novacraft's growth trajectory alongside Victoria Corporation's transformation. When people underestimate you, they give you an incredible gift. They stop watching you carefully. They dismiss your capabilities. They ignore your moves until it's too late to counter them. Rebecca spent the next 20 minutes detailing her strategy, not just the business tactics, but the psychological warfare, the careful documentation, the patient building of alliances. "The most dangerous opponent in any negotiation is the one your adversary doesn't take seriously," she concluded. "My uncle thought he was competing against a naive girl who didn't understand business. He was actually competing against someone who understood business better than he did, and who had been studying his weaknesses for 5 years." The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. As Rebecca left the stage, her phone was already buzzing with interview requests, speaking opportunities, and business propositions. In the green room afterward, a young woman approached her, maybe 25, nervous but determined. "Ms. Martinez, I work for my family's company, and my father, he treats me the same way your uncle treated you. I don't know what to do." Rebecca handed the woman her business card. "Start documenting everything. Build your own network. Prove your competence through results, not arguments. And remember, the people who underestimate you are handing you a strategic advantage." The woman nodded eagerly. "Thank you. This gives me hope." Rebecca watched her walk away, remembering her own desperation in those supply closet breakdowns, her own fury at being dismissed and diminished. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Derek's bankruptcy filing went through this morning. His wife served him with divorce papers yesterday. Justice is served." Rebecca deleted the text without responding. Derek's destruction had been necessary, but it wasn't the point anymore. The point was what she'd built from the ashes of his arrogance. She looked around the conference center, filled with women who'd fought their own battles against dismissal and discrimination, who'd built businesses despite being told they weren't capable. "Girls don't run businesses?" Rebecca smiled, thinking about her father's legacy, her mother's strength, and the empire she was just beginning to build. They were about to find out exactly what girls could do.